Okay, so when I say Mongol Empire, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most people, it's this image of, ruthless conquerors on horseback just thundering across the plains. And look, that's not wrong, but it is only half the story.
So that's the big question we're tackling. How did an empire that was forged in some of the most brutal conquests imaginable somehow become this incredible engine for global connection? We're about to see how the Mongols totally reshaped the world and, honestly, in ways you'd never, ever expect.
So here's the plan. We'll kick things off with that central paradox, then we'll track how the empire was built and what made their conquest so effective. Then we'll get into the surprising piece that followed, how it connected the world and the legacy they left behind.
All right, let's just jump right into that contradiction, because the Mongols really have these two completely different reputations. And to get the full picture, you have to look at both sides of the coin. This really lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the stereotype, brutal barbarians, agents of destruction. And yeah, that's definitely rooted in fact. But the other side of the story is that these same people unified pretty much the entire Eurasian landmass, the biggest single empire in history. And that very act of unification, well, it turned them into unbelievable catalysts for global exchange.
So to figure out how this all happened, you have to go right back to the beginning. Back to a man who was born with the name Temujin.
See, Temujin was a pastoral nomad. His entire world was about migrating with livestock, which made him incredibly tough and probably one of the greatest horsemen the world has ever seen. The legend is that he was born clutching a blood clot in his hand, which in Mongol culture was a sign of a great destiny. And boy did he live up to it. Through this amazing mix of cunning diplomacy and just raw military power, he did what everyone thought was impossible. By 1206, he united all the warring Mongol tribes and was declared Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. And the expansion that came next, well, it was just relentless.
So, how did a group of nomads manage to defeat these massive established empires all across Asia and Europe? I mean, this was not just luck. It was a complete revolution in military thinking.
Their secret sauce was really built on four things. Their army was organized with this ruthless decimal-based efficiency, everything in units of 10. Their composite bows could outrange and outpower pretty much any other archer on the field. On horseback, they were just untouchable, pulling off these complex moves that would completely baffle bigger, slower armies. And they were masters of psychological warfare, using strategic terror to convince cities to surrender before a battle even started. And the scale of their destruction, it was just staggering. I mean, the sack of Baghdad in 1258 wasn't just another battle. This was the end of the Islamic Golden Age, the end of the Abbasid Caliphate. It was a world-changing event that totally cemented their terrifying reputation. But then came the great pivot.
Because after the conquest, something truly remarkable happened. The very violence that built the empire started to give way to a new kind of stability across a huge chunk of the globe.
Historians have a name for it, the Pax Mongolica. It's Latin for the Mongol peace. Sounds like a contradiction, right? But once the fighting was over, the Mongols enforced law and order across their new territories. So for the first time in centuries, massive parts of Eurasia were stable and united under one single authority.
Now the empire eventually split into separate kingdoms, called khanates, ruled by Genghis Khan's descendants. And these new rulers, they turned out to be incredibly adaptable. In China, for instance, you have Kublai Khan. He set up the Yun dynasty and was smart enough to realize he needed to rule like a Chinese emperor to be seen as legitimate. So he adopted local customs and administrative practices, even while the Mongol elite stayed a distinct group. It was frankly a brilliant political move.
And this newfound stability, it had a profound consequence. It reopened and secured the ancient trade routes, basically supercharging a whole new era of global connection.
So how did they manage this enormous territory? Well, the key was something called the YAM system. Think of it like an imperial pony express, but on a continental scale. It was this network of relay stations with fresh horses, food, and a place to sleep. It meant that official messengers and merchants could travel with unbelievable speed and safety. It basically became the information superhighway of its day, carrying not just goods, but brand new ideas across the world.
The logic behind it all was simple, but so powerful. First, unify the territory under one government. That right there made the legendary Silk Roads safer than they had been in centuries. You add that security to the incredible efficiency of the YAM system, and boom, the stage was set for an exchange of goods and ideas on a scale nobody had ever seen before.
And the results of that exchange? They changed the world.
You had vital medical knowledge from the Islamic world flowing into Europe. The number system we literally use today, which came from India, spread west and completely revolutionized European math and business. And this wasn't an accident. The Mongols made it policy. They'd adopt new writing systems to run their empire, and they would deliberately move skilled artisans across entire continents just to share their expertise. Of course, no empire lasts forever. The Mongolian Empire's decline was actually pretty quick, but its collapse had consequences that were just as profound as its rise.
And here is the final amazing irony. As Mongol power faded, the people they had ruled started to reassert themselves. And in reaction to the Mongol period, they began to build stronger, more centralized states, more unified cultures. So in a lot of ways, the collapse of the Mongol Empire is what set the stage for the rise of the modern world order that came next.
The story of the Mongols is just this powerful reminder that history is never, ever simple. It's always this messy tangle of destruction and creation, of violence and connection. And it really forces us to ask, what other turbulent times in history have maybe completely unintentionally laid the groundwork for new kinds of progress? Definitely something to think about.